mechanics of this worked out.
In my head, he ties them like this, and then both of them are just like, so they can hold the torches. Is what I'm thinking.
In between.
Yeah.
In my head, they spin in a circle.
Yeah, it was
the
a
whole time.
circle,
Yeah.
and it was a spinning. Yeah, like
Every
a
time-
fidget spinner, just like
Yes.
going there.
Every time I've read this story, that's exactly what my head goes to. It's like just 300 spinners out in the field burning everything down.
It goes back to like another thing, just the mindset of Samson and all the things that he does. Like, what did those foxes do to you, man?
Yeah, he.
Hey guys, welcome to the Pointman podcast. My name is Zach. Thank you for hitting this episode, hitting this video, and hanging out with us here for the next little bit. Our whole mission here is to connect men to the Bible and to make Jesus known to men everywhere. Amen. Part of that mission is here online with you guys, and another part is when we have our live in-person semesters and events, which we are wrapping up. This is the last episode of what we've been calling Act Like Men. Yep. We've been going through this for, I think, 6 weeks online.
It's been a while now, yeah.
I think it's 6 weeks online, and we had 3 weeks in person. Yep. We got one of them cut off. So make sure that you hit the thumbnails that look like this one, because we're talking about dudes of the Bibles. The ones that are messages and not podcasts are labeled message, night 1, 2, 3, whatever. So make sure you check out this whole series, Act Like Men, as we're wrapping this one up, and we're going into a really cool kind of series of topics coming up here in the next little bit from dudes operating in just cool spaces that are not traditionally thought of as Christian spaces. Some guys with some crazy backstories, some interviews, and back to some topical type conversations.
Yes. Yeah, we're going to try to get on topics, and I know everyone really enjoys that. Actually, very practical. So we're going to kind of go back to that a little bit off of just the stories of the Old Testament.
Yeah. So if you've got a topic you want to hear about or want us to grab out of the Bible and to dive into, make sure you leave us a comment or head over to That.church Pointman on Facebook. Send us a message, or Instagram at TC Pointman. You can send us a message there as well, and we will put it on the list. Yes. And we'll dive into it with God's word and see how we can connect it and how we can impact the lives of you and the men that need to hear those conversations through God's word.
Yes.
But today is the end of Act Like Men.
Act Like Men, yeah. And we're talking
Samson,
the strong guy, the buff guy who did some crazy, wild, insane stories in the Bible. There's like he's only has 2 chapters in the story of Samson, but kind of crazy, wild things happen in the story. So I'm excited to dive into it today.
Yeah. So he's naturally strong. That natty or not situation. Totally natty.
Well, I thought as you just said, I'm thinking like he's not natural because he gets his strength from God.
No,
So
it's natty, baby.
He's juicing on God.
Yeah, juicing on God.
Juicing on God.
That's a joke.
That's a title.
That's pretty good. So if you want to read the story, which I recommend you do, we're going to butcher it, chop it up as much as we interpreted it. But
Butcher it as in cut it into parts for conversation.
yes.
Not as in straight from God's word.
We're going to give it to us. We're going to give it to you the way we read it, but the Bible actually reads you as you're reading it. So we suggest go ahead and read it for yourself, just because you're going to get more out of it as well as we're talking about it. But it's in Judges, and it's chapter 13 through 16. So pretty quick read. It's not very long. And then there's also one verse that talks about Samson in Hebrews 11:32 as well.
Yeah. So Samson, like a lot of births in the Old Testament, come by interesting means.
Yes.
To a barren woman.
Yes.
With the promise from God that he will be raised from birth for God's glory.
Yes.
He's born as a Nazarite. He takes the Nazarite vow in the womb, essentially. God tells his mom to like quit drinking, quit doing anything harmful. You're going to have a baby, and he can't be shown or exposed to any of these things. Yeah. Like he needs to be pure from the start. So this is the guy who literally is from the birth to the grave, essentially lives his life for the glory of God and only for the glory of God. Or that was the intention.
Yes. So his mother actually gets visited by the angel of the Lord, which every time you see the angel of the Lord, it's usually something crazy big is happening. Usually.
Yeah. There's a lot of people who firmly believe that that's a Jesus sighting in the Old Testament.
Yeah. So Jesus, New Testament, but they say when he says the angel of the Lord that it actually was Jesus, but there's nowhere in Scripture that it says that. But
there is some defense for it, just not in today's conversation.
Yeah. But yeah, so I just want to read that spot in Judges, because I don't know, anytime that something stands out to me when I'm reading, I want to say it, even though I don't know if it makes a difference or it changes anything. But it's Judges 13:14 says, she must not eat grapes or raisins, drink wine or any other alcoholic drink, or eat any forbidden food. So I don't know. This is probably just me being dumb, but I didn't know there was any other like drink that people usually drink that's not alcoholic besides wine. So I didn't know there was more than like, I know they had like mead back in the day as well. So like I've never read in the Bible anywhere where it talks about other than liquor. Wine. Yeah, I haven't seen that anywhere else besides the story.
Yeah, I'm sure that they had fermented drink outside of wine. I'm sure that wine was such a normal consumable that I'm sure that there was something else. Now I don't know the biblical connection to it, but if you're in The Chosen, Mary goes into like the pub essentially,
right? And they're drinking who knows.
It's not wine.
Yeah,
you're not hiding it if it's wine during this period of time.
Yeah, so I just thought that was interesting and it stood out to me. But the spot that I really thought was cool, whenever the angel is actually talking to Samson's parents, is in Judges 13:18. He said, "Why do you ask my name?" Because they're like, "We want to know your name so we can go back and praise you and worship you for this." And he's like, "Why do you ask my name?" The angel of the Lord replied, "It is too wonderful for you to understand." And I was going to ask Ben if what does you know what your Bible said? That I know you like to listen to the King James version. I was like, what is your? I was curious to see what the King James version says about it is too wonderful for you to understand. And that's Judges 13:18.
13:18.
Yeah.
Says, and the angel of the Lord said unto him, Why askest thou thus after my name, seeing it is a secret?
Seen as a secret.
Yeah.
Interesting.
ESV is wonderful.
Wonderful. Right. And so I thought that was cool. And it's just like something that stood out to me is like, you can't understand my name. It's too amazing and too wonderful. And they didn't realize until later on that it was actually the angel of the Lord. And it's kind of wild that anytime you see that in the Old Testament, there's a couple cross references where people see the Lord and they're like, I'm going to die.
Yeah.
They're always like terrified that they're actually going to die. So it's cool to me is like, I saw the angel of the Lord, like, the first thought is like, we're going to die. We saw God,
Yeah.
We're going to get killed because of this, but it's just something that stood out to me. It was cool.
Well, Moses is the only one who stands in the presence of God and face to face with God.
Yeah.
And so there probably is some, this is post Moses. So this is, they have this conversation, they have the history that Moses would have been involved in. So they very well probably do believe like
traditional fear.
Yeah, you literally can't get in his presence or you're going to die. Yeah. But it has to be bartered or brokered through the priest or the judges. Yeah.
Yeah. But it's just interesting to me. I think the whole beginning part we talked about a little bit earlier before the podcast started is like really cool. The whole spot where before he's born and them actually talking to the angel of the Lord is really cool. It's like, I know we're going to talk about Samson, but that it's just a cool spot that I enjoyed a lot reading.
I love it. I was like, let me go get Didi. Like, he wants to come talk to you too. Yeah. Make sure this is real.
Yeah. She was like, she saw him and she's like, I have to go tell my husband, bring him here because you're not going to believe what I saw. That's just really cool.
Yeah, so Samson, what do we know about Samson? Samson's a strong dude. That is the general consensus of what we know about him.
Yep.
And he does he's the Bible Chad. Like, if you know, like the meme Chad. He kind of is, though. Yeah. Like, if you think about all the things he does, he goes after women he's not supposed to go after. He does things he's not supposed to do. And he's this massively strong human.
Yep.
Long hair, muscle, ready to rock and roll.
Right, yeah. So they said, the angel of the Lord tells his mom, do not cut his hair because he'll get his strength from his hair and from God, but like his kind of power will be kept in his hair. I guess that's kind of how I interpret it. But Judges 14.
I think it's an obedience thing.
Yes.
I think it's just an easy sign of obedience. I don't know if it's necessarily like it's magic hair as much as it's the obedience to God. Because it talks about, and we may get to it in a little bit, but the moment he cuts his hair, he knows the Lord has left him.
Right. And so he disobeyed, and that's why he got his hair cut. But one of the spots that I want to talk about at the beginning part is whenever he sees a very beautiful lady. He's like, I'm going to go marry her. Yeah. So him and his parents, they get together.
Go get her for me, pretty much.
We're gonna go grab her. And so Judges 14:5-6, it says, as Samson and his parents were going down to Timnah, a young lion suddenly attacked Samson near the vineyards of Timnah. At the moment, the Spirit of the Lord came powerfully upon him. So I think this is the first spot where you actually see the Spirit of the Lord, and he came powerfully upon him. And he ripped the lion's jaws apart with his bare hands. He did this as easily if it was a young goat, but he didn't tell his father or mother about it.
To be fair, would it be that easy to do it if it was a young goat too?
That's kind of what I was thinking too. I was like, how hard would that be?
Yeah, like to break. I mean, even like a human jaw, you would think that would be pretty tough.
Tough, right? But then
Let alone a lion.
He did it to a lion, which is really cool. You always see like we also talked about David also clubbed a lion and a bear to death, and then Samson comes out and he kills the lion as well. So I think that's pretty cool.
This is something interesting here. This part of this lion, because the lions come up in Old Testament a few places in different times. Isn't it? I think we pull ourselves out of the geographical location where these things are going on so frequently.
Yes.
Like when I hear lion, I'm thinking like we don't have them. Like it's a zoo animal in America, but for them that would have been like. I don't think of there just being lions in their life
randomly.
Like they're just like walking down the road and there's a lion. But that's a thing.
Bite you and eat you right there.
Yeah. So they have to defend against the lion. That's not anything to do with salvation or Jesus or the Bible, but just interesting that geographically where they're at is significant because of things like that.
Yeah, that is very interesting. And I don't know if you guys also, whenever you're reading through the story, if you thought about the word revenge. I mean, you had to have, right?
In this story?
This story. This is the most like, I listened to it this week and then I also went back and read it. And I feel like the word revenge just keeps coming back into my mind because when you see revenge, somebody attacks somebody else or offends someone else and that person retaliates. And then because of that person retaliates back. And then because of that person.
Yeah.
And it's a never ending cycle between him and the Philistines.
Yeah.
I don't know. Did you kind of catch on to that now?
I didn't think about it when I was reading it, but it makes sense when you say it like that.
Yes. So it all kind of starts off with Samson going and he tells a riddle about that lion that he killed.
Yeah.
So they're coming back.
Bible chat.
Yes.
Coming back
exactly.
to it. Yep.
So they end up going and they get his new wife and they're bringing him back. And on his way back, he sees that the lion, they're actually a beehive that started inside of the chest canal.
Yeah, like the carcass.
The
Just
belly.
the cavity.
The belly
Cavity
of
of the lion.
Of the lion, right. And so there's like honey in there. So he grabs the honey and he eats it and he shares it with his parents. Then he goes back and then during the wedding feast and the ceremony going on, he hasn't married her yet. He's about to. And then he like tells a riddle, which you guys are going to have to help me. Like, why is he doing this? So like he tells the riddle of like basically the lion. I have to go back and read it, but he says like something sweet, like basically gives like a riddle of honey being inside the lion.
Out of the eater came something to eat. Out of the strong came something sweet.
Something sweet. And so he
Dr. Seuss.
Yeah. So like there's 30 guys that come and he tells this riddle to him. He's like, if you don't figure it out, you're going to owe me like 30 coats. And if you can figure out, I owe you 30 coats. Which, why? I guess he's just like I don't know.
I think it's like, it goes back to why I was so interested in the parents this time when I was reading through this was, I think Zach said it. He basically told his parents that you're going to get this person for me, right? So it shows the kind of upbringing he had, where he was always probably told that he was a special kid, right?
Yeah.
And he had that special mentality. So everything he does is very self-centered, right? And why would when you're raised like this and you're special, he's doing everything opposite to show how special he is. It's like a weird dynamic there. It's super strange. So when he does this, all the way back to when he goes to the feast, he knows what he did is wrong. He has to. I mean, he knows the rules, but now he's tricking them because they won't get it because of what he did. He knows it's wrong, right? And so in this, it's that kind of little secret with himself, but he's selfish. Yes. What he is.
Yeah, that's interesting. So this point in the story is kind of weird. It doesn't. It just kind of is thrown in there, like. But he's at this feast, and the 30 companions come in front of him, and he's unprovoked to make this bet with them.
Yes,
it's just like an ego play for him. It's like, I did something naughty.
Yes.
Like, come and figure it out.
And that's where I'm talking about the start of the revenge because of this moment.
Yeah.
This is where it kind of like the tit for tat starts to happen, but as it unfolds,
But so one thing that we kind of breezed over, you talked about the Nazarite. His mom wasn't allowed to drink anything that was created from the vine.
Yeah.
But the other part of that was that she wasn't allowed to have anything that was unclean.
Yes.
Part of that Nazarite vow is that he could not eat anything out of something that was dead. And so that is why this is significant that he ate the honey from the carcass of the lion, because it was something living out of something dead. That's cool. And so that's why it's like this naughty thing. That's why it even mentions it again, because he's like, look what I did, But that's what's going on here. But he's unprovoked, and then he gives this interesting riddle. It's like, what?
Yeah. So he makes the bet basically with the wedding party about trying to figure the riddle out. They can't figure it out, and this is kind of where it starts. His soon-to-be wife gets told by them, like, you better tell us what the riddle means, or we're going to burn you and your family to the ground. We're going to burn your
kill
house
everybody.
down. Yeah,
Burn it down.
and so
Solid group of people.
and so yeah.
What's up?
But this is kind of where he talks about, like, you know, you shouldn't try to marry someone. I'm not saying you shouldn't marry someone that's not a Christian, but try to really figure out and make sure you want to marry that person, because that person has a lot of influence on your life.
I don't think it's wrong to
Ton
say
of influence.
I don't think it's outside the bounds to say don't marry someone who's not a Christian.
It's they're going to have a lot of influence on you
Yeah.
because you're with them every day, and that's just, you know, you kind of combine into one person, you know, one spirit, and that's what it says. You leave your father's house and you're combined with your wife.
Yeah.
And so just be very. I know it's like this story has that in it, and talks about it as well with his next love, because they don't get married either, but. Like, be careful about who you marry, because it matters a lot, and you'll see it why in this story.
I think I think that is a big lesson from the story of Samson. And people have abused this conversation about marrying people who are not of the same tradition as you. They abuse it in conversation and history. But for us, like, part of why they're segregated and why God sets them aside, why He tells them to wipe the promised land clean, is so that they're not influenced in a negative, right?
Influence, yes.
And for him, in this instance, he has this. His parents kind of like are like, "Are you sure? Like,
Yeah, they did.
you don't want to marry someone like us, like in our traditions and in our family." I think.
Yes, yeah, that's exactly what I said. Yeah,
And so in that, I don't think it's outside the bounds to say, like, you shouldn't marry someone who's not a Christian even today, because it's the same thing. Like, we're having the same conversations. You don't have to agree on everything.
yeah, right.
But to have the same faith that God is God, Jesus died for your sins, like those should be non-negotiable issues. Like, right below, are you attracted to your wife? Or right above, are you, you know,
You're right.
attracted, Christian, get along, married? Like, I think that's the funnel we're talking about here.
And that's going to be one of my points when we get to Delilah later on in the story, is like, yes, she was amazingly beautiful, but she did not have that relationship with God, because it says the Philistines worship actually Dagon, a totally different God. So she doesn't have the same. She didn't have the same belief system that he had. But it's good.
But I think it's important. Yeah.
Part of that attraction too should be that she's a Christian,
Yes.
right? So that goes into her,
Yeah.
right? So, like, I think a lot of us at first, because we're guys, right? We're visual people. I'm like, oh, she's pretty, but you know, I don't know. When we were dating, what high school or early 20s, you date somebody and you go talk to them. I might get in trouble for saying this, but you go and talk to them and you're like, they're not very intellectual, or like kind of dumb.
Yeah.
And so, like, you kind of lose the attraction on that. So you should be able to talk to them and.
I think that's but everybody's like, what's the most important thing whenever you're looking for a spouse? Like, oh, they're a Christian. No. Are you attracted to them? Because if you're not attracted to them, I'm talking about, it's not that that's not important, but it's the first thing that is important, because that's part of this relationship.
You're not going to well, I don't know. Because if you think about it in the story, I feel like we should put a pin in that, come back and talk to it when we get to Delilah, because I have some good points about that.
Okay.
We'll come back to it.
Yeah.
So the next part that happens is, so they end up, so he kind of gets like tricked by his the girl he's about to marry, and she's like, tell me what it is, you know, I won't tell anybody. So he ends up telling him the riddle. She goes and tells the guys who got told they're going to kill you if you don't tell me the riddle. And so they end up coming back and it's like, oh, we know the riddle. We know what it means.
Also, another great lesson for relationships, the manipulation that he falls into multiple times, where it's like,
100%.
it's like, oh, you don't trust me.
Yes.
Well, it's really good that you said that, because he's Samson. She obviously knows that he's strong and a very powerful person. Why don't you just go to him and be like, hey, these guys are threatening me?
True.
So where's that coming from? So she obviously doesn't love him.
He's also already he clearly has an ego the size of the earth. So it's not like he wouldn't go defend his, you know.
Yeah, if you read the story, you know he could go kill those guys
defend
easily.
his woman.
But so that's the next crazy thing that happens is, like, they come and tell him the thing. So he's like, okay, fine. They know the riddle. So then he goes and kills 30 random dudes. Right, and takes their coats and pays the guys he kills off with the dead people's coats, which I'm like, Samson, what the heck, man? Like, you keep jacking it up. So, like, he goes and kills those guys, takes their coats, and pays off the bet that he made. And that is what the spot, I think, the whole revenge starts. Like, he kills people, and he doesn't have any regard. Like, God is going to bless you no matter what, is what he told Samson. And then he goes and like he jacks it up, and he doesn't follow God. He doesn't do what he's supposed to in this moment.
But check this out. Check this out in that section right there.
Yeah.
Verse 19, and the Spirit of the Lord rushed upon him.
Yeah.
So it's not even so much that he went and did it, but it's like God's like, get him.
Well,
crazy.
This goes back. That's what I was going to kind of talk about. That really hit me in this story was every time he did something that was probably wrong, the Spirit of the Lord came upon him, and it makes me think of abusing our gifts that God already gave us.
That's good.
Right. Yeah. So God gives us. We have gifts, right? Whatever it may be music, whatever.
His was
but we get
strength.
It was with strength.
Yes.
And so God didn't take that away from him. It was just abuse of that gift that God gave us.
That's an interesting way of looking at it.
That's really good.
The revelation of God's law exists, and they have to follow God's law. There's great punishment in the Old Testament for stepping outside of God's law, not just for others, but also for his own people whenever they fail to uphold the law. So to say that it wasn't just that, like, this is the consequence, is like, hey, my dude Samson going to take care of you whether he realizes it's for me or not, if all things are for his glory.
Yeah.
But I could also see having a conversation about it being like an abuse of gifts, like just being so strong. And it's like,
Yes, so he actually, right after that, so he goes and so he kills the 30 of them, and then they come and back, and so they have this like conversation where you shouldn't, well, her father actually marries his best man with his best man. So like he tries to come back to his wife, and she's like, well, her dad was like, I've already given her to your best man. And he's like, again, tit for tat again. If anyone ever has like one spot in the story where someone forgives the other person, the story doesn't happen. And it's not, this is crazy. I don't see, that's what I'm saying. It's like, if the father would have forgiven, or if Samson would have forgiven, or if the Philistines would have forgiven, they just keep going back and forth. And that's something that's happened to me before in my life, where someone's wronged me and I'm like, I'm going to get him back, you know? And I'm sure there's people out there who are like, that's all they're bent on is, I want revenge on people who's wronged me. And this story just keeps coming back to me and slapping me in the face of like, you should not have revenge on people who, you know, take action against you, because God wants to forgive, and he's a forgiving God. He wants you to do the same thing. So, he goes and he actually sets fire to all their fields using 300. He catches 300 foxes. Let's talk about that.
That part is really glossed over.
He catches 300. How do you catch 300 fox? Like,
and it wasn't. There wasn't any. As far as I'm tracking, there's no translation that said he trapped. Like, he didn't, like, it was like he snatched up 300 foxes. And let's not forget
went and caught 300 foxes is what I got.
Right? That's what all of them say.
Yeah.
But what cracks me up, what I was laughing about earlier, was the best man. Like, what kind of best man is
terrible
that?
best man.
You're like, you went to go kill these people, so I'm going to take your wife.
Yeah, it's checked out.
I thought it was interesting just that he was still considered a best man. Like that was even a title back. Like, why? We still have best men today. And Samson had one at this doomed wedding of
Yeah, it was not good.
whatever, year negative 300 or whatever.
Yeah, so he takes all these foxes and tires because of that happened to him. So he's like, they upset him. He's going to, clash back. And like he sets the torches on these two foxes' tails and let them set fire to all the fields, basically burn down all the food of the Philistines.
How does this work? So do they run in circles?
Yeah,
Are they spinning? Are they?
Well, if there's 300 of them, they're everywhere.
I know, but he ties them tail to tail.
Yes, yeah.
So do they run in opposite directions? Like, I'm confused on like how the mechanics of this worked out.
In my head, he ties them like this, and then both of them are just like, because so they can hold the torches. Is what I'm thinking.
In between.
Yeah.
In my head, they spin in a circle.
Yeah, it
the whole
was a
time.
circle, and it was a spinning. Yeah, like
Every
a
time-
fidget spinner, just like going there.
Every time I've read this story, that's exactly what my head goes to. It's like just 300 spinners out in the field burning everything down.
It goes back to like another thing, just the mindset of Samson and all the things that he does. Like, what did those foxes do to you, man?
Yeah, he
kinda
takes
messed
that out
up.
on everybody, you know, not just people, animals as well.
Yeah.
But
The over like exaggeration of Samson's comebacks are what cracked me up. It's
Yes.
like you lost a bet. I'm gonna kill 30 people.
Exactly. Yes.
You slept with my wife. I'm gonna burn you down with 300 foxes tied together. There's 150 fidget spinners out here on fire that are about to take down your entire life.
Yeah, so he burns down basically all their food. They got nothing left. He burns down like everything crop they had, burns it down. The Philistines are mad. So they're like, who did this to us? And they're like, well, Samson did it because they wronged him. They gave his wife to another man, his best friend. And they're like, okay, we're going to go kill her father and her. And so Samson's like, dude, what the heck?
Yeah.
He's like, y'all didn't have to kill her. Now I'm going to have to get you back again.
All you had to do was kill him so I could have her back. So,
Yeah, so it's like so many times. And like, if one person in the story would have forgiven, so like, take that from me in my life. If there was a bad situation that happens, if there was any time where I would have forgiven, would the story have turned out better than it did?
Yeah. So we're going to have to take a break.
Okay.
But this is one way in which Samson kills a large number of people.
Yep.
But it's not the most interesting way in which he does it in this story. And so when we come back, we'll dive into the way that he counters again.
Yes.
He bounces back again, claps back at his haters, and handles a few more dudes in this story. So we'll be right back.
All right.
Yeah. So that was an awesome series. It was Jonah would have been an interesting acolyte man. Although if you want to learn more about Jonah, just check out our 4 weeks of discussion, pretty in depth on Jonah from start to finish of his story.
Chapter a week.
Yep, literally. There's only 4 chapters in the book of Jonah. Yep. Anyway, we are back to Samson.
Yes.
So Samson's just killed a bunch of people and property with 150 pairs of foxes tied together with a torch. But that is not the most interesting way in which he kills. So there's rebuttal, like you say, from him using the foxes.
Yes.
They go and they kill the...
Yeah, so they are all like super angry. They go and kill his old ex-wife. I don't know if they ever actually got married. It doesn't say if they actually got married or not, but basically, I guess they didn't. So he just...
What does it say? Does it say he gave his wife to his best man?
No, I don't think it said wife. I don't think it ever said wife. Oh wait, yeah. So his wife was given in marriage to the man who had,
That's what I thought.
So they already got married because he kept back and he was like, "I'm trying to sleep with her," and they're like, "Well, I already gave her up." So, sorry.
It was like, it's been a long journey. I need to bed down.
Yeah, so that was interesting. But anyway, so they end up actually killing her and her father, and he's like, this is verse 15:7. It says, "Because you did this, Samson vowed, I won't rest until I take my revenge on you." And then he kills a lot of them right after that, and then he goes and hides in a cave. He runs away.
Yeah, verse 14 and 15. When he came to Lehi, the Philistines came out shouting to meet him. Then the Spirit of the Lord rushed upon him yet again, and the ropes that were on his arms became as flax that has caught fire, and the bonds melted off his hands. And he found a fresh jawbone of a donkey, and put out his hand and took it, and then struck it. With it, he struck 1,000 men. And Samson said, with the jawbone of a donkey, heaps upon heaps, with the jawbone of a donkey, I have struck down 1,000 men. He also liked to rhyme. He's like...
Yeah. He's a poet. He's a poet.
Yeah.
Poet, yeah.
Little rapper for the day.
Yeah, I don't know. When you talk about Samson, you got to talk about the jawbone just because it's like, it stands out to you when you read it. You're reading through it and you're like, you have to rewind. What did he just say?
Yeah.
Oh, he killed 1,000 people with a donkey's jawbone, and then that's the story that happened. And you're like, okay, wild, insane.
Yeah.
And then he's like super thirsty after that. I don't know if you get to that part where he's like kills everybody, and he tells God, "Why are you trying to let me die?" And like, didn't God just get you through 1,000 of your enemies, and then all of a sudden you're super thirsty, and so you blame God for you being thirsty? I don't know, it just kind of stood out to me. Is like, I killed all these people, and then he's gonna tell God like, "You just gotta let me die here." And he's like, I was like, okay, I'll open up some water for you, like. Bro, you just killed 1,000 people, not because of your own strength, because I give that to you.
Yeah.
Just thought that was interesting.
I mean, you see, when we talk about Elijah, so Elijah kills the 450 prophets of Baal. First off, he taunts them, he overcomes them, and kills them. He goes on the run because he's terrified of Jezebel's reaction. But we see the same thing.
Yeah.
He goes to sleep. God wakes him up. Angel of the Lord actually again comes, wakes him up, feeds him. He goes back to sleep.
Yeah.
And it's like, you just saw the power of God on display. You just saw this incredible, like you used the power of God to taunt your enemies, but you don't have enough energy, or you don't have enough faith and focus to overcome this exhaustion, this thirst to believe that God is going to supply you in this next.
And I know we've talked about this lots of times, but like God will get you through something, and then the next thing that happens to you again, you're like, heck, can God actually get me through? It's like, he just got you through that. I've done that in my life, and I'm sure.
Rewind the tape.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, God has gotten you through it before. He will get through you this next thing. So just like, have that faith. That's really another good point. I know it's not the small spot of the story, but it's interesting.
That is interesting. Yeah. And, men, I think, we like self-reliance. Like we're taught self-reliance. It's like you got to be able to fix stuff. You got to be able to kill your own dinner. Like guys are expected to be able to rely on themselves for so many things. We were talking about it this morning about how, if you look in the Bible, we see things like healing, deliverance. We see all of these like works of the Spirit. Why do you not see a lot of those things today? I am a firm believer that we don't see a lot of those things here in America because we don't need them. Yeah. Like we have Tylenol.
Or we don't have faith.
I don't think it's necessarily we don't have faith. I think we have provision. I think we have an intervention
So
versus
relying on ourselves versus relying on God.
Right. Like if you look at a third world country, they still experience a lot of these things. Or it's reported that they do. And I think a lot of that's because they need it. Like they can't rely on themselves to go and to solve all their problems. Like for us, it's just expected like, oh, you can't do this thing, work harder. You don't feel well, go to the doctor. Like we have an answer for all of our problems, whereas they don't. They rely on
other people in the world are relying on God for everything, and unlike us.
Yeah, and we don't. I just think that's a thought.
No, it's good.
And now we're to the most famous portion of the story of Samson.
Yes. Well, right before this, I do want to talk about this one though, the gate story. I thought it was cool. Just a quick gate, you know what I'm talking about?
Rips the gates
Yeah,
off.
so that's so crazy to me. So he goes and stays in this town. They're trying to kill him. He's actually sleeping with a prostitute, which you don't talk about that a lot. It's like this dude was a womanizer.
Chad.
Yeah. So he goes and sleeps. He's sleeping with a prostitute, and they're like, "We're gonna kill him when he comes out of this house." He sneaks out of the window and goes and takes the gates off of that town and carries them on his shoulder out of there. Just leaves with them.
Dude, this is a Limp Biscuit listening, monster drinking.
Yeah, he's wild.
Beef jerky eating.
I don't know, how strong do you got to be? I don't know how big the gates are. I assume they're large. They got to be. It's the town's gates.
Tear off that door and carry it up a hill and see what happens. That door's heavy.
Yeah, so he's carrying them like he's a beast. But I just thought that story was cool. But now, yes, let's dive into this.
Before that, how strong do you think we're talking here?
What I'm thinking is like Samson to me is like the OG like Arnold Schwarzenegger looking. I'm thinking just because like
Conan the Barbarian.
Yeah, exactly.
Type
That's
situation.
what in my head I'm picturing. I don't know if you're thinking like Brian Shaw.
I'm thinking maybe. Brian Shaw. I'm thinking like this massive human. If you don't know who Brian Shaw is, he's the world's strongest man, but he's like 6'10", 400 pounds. Massive human.
Yeah.
I'm thinking that. I'm thinking it's like not necessarily.
Look, he probably doesn't look swole, but he just is a big, strong dude.
There's a reason the strongest people in the world don't look that strong. Right. It's because it takes a lot of fat to move a lot of weight. Like there's a limit to what lean can do.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think he's just a huge human.
Yeah, that's cool. But now, Delilah.
Yes. So we see round 2 of poor decisions and mates.
And that is a big spot that I was want to talk about is like he picks another Philistine person that's he knows he shouldn't have. He should have learned from his first wife that was that was a mistake, who like instantly got with another guy who's like, maybe I should try it again, you know? And you're like,
these people love me.
What are you doing? Like,
I've killed a bunch of them.
Yeah, what are you doing, man? Like but the thing is, and the same thing happens in our lives. It's like the lust of the flesh. That's what brings him back to it again. She's so beautiful, so good looking that he's just like, wow. And you'll see it again in the story too, like with Delilah. Like it's so hard to overcome that sexual sin, and like people see that, and it happens to us every day. But like, you let a lot of things slide in your life because of that sexual sin, and it happens in Samson's life pretty bad.
Yeah, so in that tier system of what we look for in a mate, attractiveness is important, but we also do have to have a mutual faith.
Yes. Yeah.
And that's why when we were kind of bouncing around earlier, I think it's safe to say like, hey, if you're a Christian male, your spouse needs to be a Christian female.
It's going to be a lot harder if it's not. A lot harder.
I would go out on I'm not saying that you shouldn't try to witness to that person. I'm just saying that like maybe that's not your spouse.
No.
Maybe that's a down the road thing. If you got patience and you're willing to work and to grow and to witness and to love that person over time, okay, maybe.
Yeah.
But I'm saying like day one, like,
sure,
I'm a Christian, you're not. Like,
yeah. And
maybe let's pause on that for a second.
I gotta look up the verse in the Bible where it says like, do not divorce your wife or your husband if they are not Christian, because you can be the reason that person gets saved. It says that in the Bible. I just gotta remember what verse that is. So like, don't separate yourself from the person if you're already married, because that's
not what I'm saying.
Yeah. But like, they might be saved because of you, but that's not the main reason to get married. Is like, I'm gonna save this person, so I'm gonna marry him. Like, that's not easy path to go down. And I don't recommend that at all.
And I think that verse is speaking like retroactively for what we're talking about. It's like, all right, you've already done this thing.
Yep.
Divorce is evil. Don't divorce for this reason.
Yep.
But if you're not, like, hey, this is a check mark. Like, we need to make sure that we're jiving on this thing.
Yep. All right, so let's dive into that story. So he falls in love with this girl named Delilah. Which is this interesting name because you hear it a lot, but
hey there, Delilah. What's it like in New York City?
But so he falls in love with her, and she is instantly not good. There's 5 different kingdoms in the kings of the Philistines, and they all come to her and say, "We're going to give you 1,000 pieces of silver if you can get
1,100.
1,100 pieces of silver if you can give Samson over to us." And she's instantly is like, "I'm in."
Yeah.
Like, that's not the girl you want to be with. That will instantly turn on you.
I mean, it's silver. It's not gold. I'm just kidding. It's probably a lot to her.
But she'd be, rich beyond her belief. But like, man, like to betray the person you love the most, which we don't know if that's the only guy she was ever with, but like, golly, it's just rough. But anyway, so like he shouldn't have trusted her. He shouldn't have went back and lived with the Philistine lady, but he does. And so I want to read this spot. So I want to talk to you guys, ask you guys about this. So she tries to tie him up 4 different times, right? So she in the house and she ties him up. One time she's like, well, you know, what makes you strong? He's like, well, this, if you tie me up with this certain thing, I will be useless and they can come get me. So she ties him up while he's sleeping, and the Philistines are here to get you. They come in, he instantly breaks out, fights him and kills him. This happens 4 times. And you're thinking to yourself, like, how could he realize, like, not realize what's going on? How can he still keep trusting this girl that's tying him up? Because there's nobody else there. It has to be her tying him up, right? What would you say? What would you guys say? Like, it's the lust, right?
Yeah,
it's gotta be. Right?
I was about to say. I think it's just really, really good.
Yeah,
I think that's
so he's like,
I
don't care. It's like, it doesn't matter what she does to me. It's like, I'm still gonna go back to it. But think about that in your life. How many times like sexual sin has drawn you back into it, even though like it's horrible for you, it's terrible, but you're still like, well, it's fine. I'll go back to sleep again. I'll be all right. I can overcome this, exactly how Samson did in his life.
I think there's 2 things that I see with this Delilah story that we've already talked about. Is one, what's different about her than his first wife or all the prostitutes he's, and I think she knew what she was doing the whole time when she was getting with Samson. So why did the Philistines the first time be like, I'm going to kill your family to his first wife, but then this one, they're like, okay, we're going to pay you, and we want you to tell us this, that, or the other, right? There's a reason behind it. It's just me saying that. I don't think there was anything specifically in Scripture that was like, oh yeah, she's a bad woman. But I think she's probably done this or done something like this in her life. I think she's prepped for that. But the other thing we're talking about is, why does he do that 4 times? And it's I've had buddies, I've had friends, family members, right? They get in these relationships, and it's a relationship of they like the thrill or the drama of their relationship.
Oh, that's true.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's just like, well, this is a very worldly thought, right? Do they really love me, or do we really have a good relationship because I don't get that excitement? I don't get upset when I think somebody's hitting on you or this, that, or the other, right? Yes, there's times for that, for sure. But at the same time, like, they're trying to cause trouble because they want that excitement. In the world, you see that in TV shows, all kinds of stuff. They're like, well, you don't have any excitement. Good. I want to go get ice cream and sit alone with you and actually have an intelligent conversation.
Yeah, not
actually
fight.
Love you and not fight.
Yeah.
That is not a bad thing if you don't fight.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah, I wonder, too, if it's something as simple as, like, their relations are just, like, he's excited for them. Like, you were talking about sexual sin. Like, it's like the same trigger of, like, porn where it's like, man, I'm into that.
Yeah.
Like, I know it's bad for me, but.
Yeah, so it's like he knows she's tying him up every night. There's nobody else there. He knows that it's her, and he doesn't care. He still goes to sleep with his head in her lap.
Yeah.
Still happens again. So it happens 4 different times and ties him up different ways, and he still breaks out, kills everybody there. And the last time, so this is the verse I actually wanted to read, Judges 16 through 17, says, she tormented him with her nagging day after day until he was sick to death of it. Finally, Samson shared his secret with her. My hair has never been cut, he confessed, for I was dedicated to God as a Nazarene from birth. If my head were shaved, my strength would leave me, and I would become as weak as anyone else. So, like, she nagged it out of him, basically, which, I don't know if there's any thing to that. But like that's it also says in Ecclesiastes, I think, or maybe Psalms, where it says, it's better to live in an attic alone than in a house with a nagging wife. It's just that it sticks out to me.
I think you're right on.
Right.
I like the King James version, and it said, "And it came to pass when she pressed him daily with her words and urged him, so that his soul was vexed to death."
ESV says the same thing. He literally gives up.
Yeah,
He's like, yeah, all right, you win.
Yeah, so she gets it out of him. He goes to sleep with his head in her lap. She brings somebody in, which that was another thing is like I wanted to bring up is like, dude is a heavy sleeper.
Yeah, it's true.
He sleeps hard.
Yeah. You're the strongest human ever.
Yeah.
Or we don't know the strongest human ever, but he's a strong
dude.
Crazy dude. No one's defeated him. He's like pretty confident that God's got him. He probably doesn't really think a whole lot about it. He's probably like,
I'm sleeping hard.
Samson tired, sleep.
Yeah, so like he's killing everybody, doing all kinds of hard work, I'm assuming every day. So he's like going to bed hard. That's kind of what I was getting to.
Like, all right, out.
He's out cold.
Yeah, he don't need the melatonin.
She ties him up all those times while he's sleeping. Like he doesn't realize it. He just slumped over asleep. But then she invites a guy in to cut his hair, shaves his head. It says, doesn't say cut. It says shaves his 7 locks off, which maybe that means shave it. I don't know. But it seems like you're getting close to the skin, right? Is what I'm thinking.
I mean, it's probably more like just clipping off the locks.
Shearing it real close to the head, I guess. I don't know.
Again, we kind of kicked this off with talking about culture. Like we read this in like it's a white dude. Right. This is probably not a white dude. This is probably someone with some ethnic
Middle
descent.
Eastern.
So the hair situation is going to be different.
Yeah,
and so it could be way easier to like just come in and cut off a lock than for like you and I.
Well, didn't it say a razor's not supposed to go to his head somewhere in the Nazarite vow?
Yeah, his hair can't be touched. Yeah,
right.
Can be cut. But yeah, so she gets it cut. He gets tied up again, and then he wakes up, and then like it's like he said, God has left him.
God's left him.
He's not with him anymore. So he tries to break free. He can't get out, and they get him. And they take him back, and they actually gouge his eyes out.
Yeah, wild.
Which, I don't know. This is what I was thinking of. It doesn't say this specifically in the Bible, but like his lust for life is what actually like one of the last things that happens to him. Like he gets his eyes gouged out.
Yeah, like a punishment for the lust.
Yeah, so like it doesn't say like that God punished him because of that. Gouged out. It's just something that I'm kind of reaching and pulling for, but kind of seems like God sometimes will take away the things that you are going against him the most. So like if your time is what you're just wasting all of your time and energy, God's going to maybe, try to steer you back in the right direction by doing things maybe to take your time away from that certain thing or certain sin.
Maybe he would have been better off earlier in the story if he lost his eyesight versus now.
You're right. No, I agree with that 100%. So he gets taken back to, and it's all happens within like 3 verses.
It's very quick.
And like he wakes up, so the Philistine capture him and gouge out, this is verse 21, gouge out his eyes, and they took him to Gaza, where he was bound with bronze chains and forced to grind grain in the prison. But before long, his hair began to grow back so quick. 3 verses, boom, boom, boom.
22 though, what a powerful verse. So like we've broken this up and we've chopped it up in this conversation. But if you think about, if you're just going straight through this story, and it's like, all right, so he's born.
Yep.
No razor to cut his head, to touch his head. Gets his first wife, bad for him. All this stuff happens. Kills all these people. Bang. Second woman comes into his life. Now his hair's cut.
Yep.
Now he has no power. So we've seen like this built up tension of this man who's so strong, can accomplish all these things, can kill whoever he wants with a jawbone of a donkey, or tying foxes together and lighting things on fire, killing 30 men for their jackets because he lost a bet. Like we've seen this guy who can just do all these things. He's got all this great power and strength and it's built up. Well, now he's weak. He's got nothing. He didn't even have the sight to see what's in front of him anymore. He's reduced. God's left him. He's reduced. But his hair began to grow. There's like a turn here. And I think it's like when we read it the way we did, it's like, it's not okay. His hair starts to come back. He's going to get his strength back. But when you really think about like the build up to what's going on here, it's like he's on top of this mountain. Now he's in the deepest valley ever. But his hair began to grow. And it's like for you and I, if you were like, get one of those good charismatic preachers going on something like this. You find yourself in the bottom of the depths of hell, but his hair began to grow.
No, that's good. That's
I think there's a lot of power in that one line.
Oh,
yeah,
sure.
no, it's good. So like sometimes it takes you getting to your rock bottom of your life before you realize, God's real and God can get you through it. Because that happened to me in my life. It took me to get to rock bottom in my life before I could, come up and say, well, I actually am going to follow God now. I'm actually going to do what I'm supposed to be doing. And sometimes that happened to Samuel, took a rock bottom, even though his life, there's not much life after this ending. But Samson, sorry.
Yeah, you're good.
But yeah, so sometimes the rock bottom is where you need to be and to get you back, you going in the right direction.
We've had this conversation, not on the podcast, I don't think, but we've had it in community groups and stuff. Guys ask this. It actually comes up a lot. The question is, do you have to hit rock bottom to really recognize your relationship with Christ? No. Firmly believe. Samson, at any point in the story, could have turned and repented from where he was, and he could have moved forward inside of the will of God. For us, we could be dealing with a specific sin, a sin issue, and we can do two things with that. We can sit and we can dwell on it, and we can feel ashamed by it. We can feel regret. We can feel all these selfish emotions about the thing that we've done, and all that's going to do is continue to push us deeper into this hole. You're going to find the next level of depth until you find that rock bottom, or you can make a decision that now your hair's going to begin to grow, but you make the decision now that, like, today, look, I repent of this thing. I'm moving forward in the power of God. I'm moving forward in his ability to forgive what I have done. And I'm going to be a different thing when I move from this place. You don't have to reach eyes gouged out, tied to a mill, circling around at the bottom of all existence to find that. You can make that decision. And you can make that decision.
Yes.
Like, you can decide that, like, if you don't have a relationship with Jesus, like, I can move forward today with a relationship in him.
Right.
And there's great power in that. I can move away from my sin. I can be a new thing. I can change. We just had baptism at the church, and it makes me think every single time we do it, it's like, it's a crazy, like, it's like a reset for us. Like when you're married and you go to a wedding, and it's like, oh, I remember how much I love my, like, not that you don't love your wife every day, but it's like, I remember what that feels like. And baptism to me is very much like that, where it's like, I see all these people, and it's like, I've been a Christian for a long time. These are essentially new Christians.
Being born again.
And it's such an incredible, you can see the emotion on them. Like for us, it's like, oh, it's baptism day. It's like, it's exciting. But then you see them and you're like, dang, it's exciting. Like,
yes, for sure.
It's a crazy thing.
No, I love it.
But it's like, what? Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, you see that in the story of David constantly, right? So David, man after God's own heart, ends up becoming king, right? Does this thing with Bathsheba, right? And Samuel's like, well, that wasn't Samuel, that was Nathan, right? The prophet comes and says, hey,
Nathan.
You took the sheep.
Yes.
And he's like, oh, I'm going to kill him. And I'm like, yeah, it was you, dude. And so, but like, that wasn't a rock bottom for him. He was still king. He was still doing all kinds of stuff. But he repented and did the right thing, right? And then
moved in power.
His son, when his son left him and he was like, hey, blah, 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 same thing. It wasn't a rock bottom for him, but he knew that what he was doing was wrong, and he began to grow back in that specific area.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, he turned his life around before God had to do that for him, but he doesn't eventually hit the rock bottom.
I mean, I'm a knucklehead like you. It took some sucker punching from God for me to be like, you got me, dude.
Yeah, I mean, Lois,
I'm going back.
Yeah, for me, I've talked about it on the podcast before, but it's just like it took the world kind of knocking me down to like the smallest person of me that I could be before I'm like, I got to do something different because my life right now is just not good.
Yeah.
And it took me being in a car, like driving home, just crying my eyes out, like listening to Turn Caleb on. I'm like, what am I doing with my life? But from that moment on, I can remember that for the rest of my life. Like I was in a low point, but I kind of feel like where I was in that Samson's life where he was like, dang, I got to do something different. This is not working out. I got to follow God and change my life around. But yeah,
I mean, thank God for Caleb, but we got to get you some better music.
But that was for the part where I listened to nothing Christian at all. I wasn't listening to anything that I was supposed to be listening to. So like, whatever it was better than
you weren't ready. You weren't ready to open up the window and let the light in.
No, not the light in. But I do want
21 times later.
I told Whitney, I was just like, just close the window, man.
I said we're gonna nail it open.
Yeah, he said he's gonna nail it. But
21 times the first time around, 18 the second time.
Right.
My brother counted this.
All right, let's put a button on the story real quick, and then we finish with our closing thoughts. But so Samson gets out. So I think it's interesting. The gate. I think the whole reason the gate story was in there is because he actually gets taken to that town that he took the gates off of, and so it's kind of like putting a little bow on the end of it, where he goes into this town. and he's grounding. They're like, bring him out. They're all drunk and they're sitting around top of this place where they watch people get tortured or whatever is happening in there. And they're just sitting there enjoying it, worshiping their day God. And they're all sitting on top, 3,000 men and women sitting on top of this house. And in the house, I guess not a house, a temple, it says. So they're there, and he gets his arms pushed in between two pillars. And he's sitting there and he prays to God, give me the strength one last time. And God gives him the strength, and he pushes the pillars down and literally kills every person that's there around him. So it says he killed more people on his way out than he did in his rest of his life. But it's just very, just kind of ending the story there for the story of Samson. But did I say something wrong?
No, it said it's worded very interesting. This is a semantics thing, but it says that, and Samson grasped the two middle pillars on each house, with the house rested. And then he says that he pushes them. But whenever it says grasped him, it makes me think like he's holding, like it's like holding it up and like ripping it. Yeah, that's in my thought. But it says allow me to lean against them so I can feel them. And he just grabs them and like knocks them out. I don't know. In my mind, I guess it may be called the Samson hold. It's a strongman event where they literally like hold two pillars together, and then they release them. Right. And they have to hold them, and the winner is whoever can hold them the longest.
Yes, right.
And I think it may actually be called the Samson hold or something like that. Yeah. So that's why I was thinking like they were holding it in instead of letting it push it out. But that's just my brain thinking through that.
Yeah, so he kills 3,000 men and women on his way out as he asks for strength one more time from the Lord, which
takes himself out with him.
Yeah, gets killed as well. So pretty wild ending to a pretty wild guy's life. But he was the judge. Like a lot of people don't talk about that, and it doesn't ever mention anything like him actually judging Israel during that time. But he was the judge for like 20 years.
Yeah, that's why he's in Judges.
Right, in Judges, right. But it's like it never mentions like he does anything else for good for like being the leader of Israel. He's just doing his own thing and chasing after women a lot of the times and having revenge.
Yeah, and having revenge fights.
Revenge, yes. Revenge fights.
Yeah, this is so we've broken every one of these down through three lenses.
Yep.
The first of those is what made him significant.
Yep.
Clearly, God's provision of strength is the significance of Samson. I mean, from birth, he's the strong human. He does incredible feats of strength and craziness. That's the significance. That's why we know him. Like, if you think of him, he has a strong man. It's Conan in the Bible. What made him human? I mean, the dude's whole life made him human. His anger, his jealousy, his rage, his sexual impurity and propriety, his unwillingness to fulfill his vow as a Nazirite. Like, I mean, everything about it is a lesson that we could take away as men.
Yeah, so we were discussing this beforehand, like, what are the good things that happened in his life? I'm like, he did a couple of good things, but a lot of the things he did, he jacked it up, which I feel like is maybe more relatable than someone who was perfect their whole life.
Oh, yeah, no doubt. It's like, it's so easy for, like, if you are someone who deals with a sexual problem, well, like, all right, I get it. Yeah. If you're someone who deals with a rage problem, it's like, okay, I can connect with them.
My guy, yeah, for sure.
Someone who deals with jealousy, it's like, okay, I get it. Yeah. Revenge, I get it. Like, there's so many like layers to them that I think every guy can kind of connect to the story of Samson. Yeah, so many things that guys can connect to.
Yes.
In this story for sure. How do we apply it today?
What stands out to me the most is have forgiveness for things that happen in your life, because if you don't, it's always going to be the tit for tat. You're going to have revenge on somebody else. They're going to take offense to that. They're going to come back at you, and then you're going to be even more mad and come back at them. So have that forgiveness in your life. Also, the second point that really stands out to me is that sin in your life that you think you can control, that you have control over, you don't. Because if you keep letting it grow and you keep letting, especially for men, that sexual sin that we have in our lives, like you think you can overcome it. I can stop anytime I want. I don't got to keep looking at this. I don't got to keep hanging out with these girls that I'm not supposed to. It will drag you out of the house, and it will get you in a spot you do not need to be in. So Samson, he learned that the hard way.
Yeah. What about you?
Cut your hair, drag you out, and poke your eyes out.
Yep.
So the irony and how God does things, right? So this really spoke to me with my word. So my word is actually wholeness. From what
what do you mean by word? They might not know what you're talking about.
So Pastor Scott, a couple Sundays ago, asked us to get a word that we were going to use throughout the year as far as how we were going to work on words to work on in ourselves and our lives and stuff. So Highly recommend it. It's been really good for me and my wife. But I found wholeness, and it was it was in Judges. There's a part of a scripture where it's such a random verse. It says, and those of the house of Benjamin that died were 25,000, and every one of them were men of valor. So through life, of course, military, things we do, competitive sports, running, physical, like we're very physical people, right? As far as just men, whatever we do. And those guys were men of valor. And there's a whole story behind why they died and all that stuff. There is the tribe of Benjamin did something bad, and then they were fighting and all that stuff. But, you can be strong, you can be valor means being fearless or courageous in war and being violent, right? So that's what Samson was strong. He was fearless. Like there was all kinds of stuff to it.
That goes back to that sleep thing. Like how is he just like conking out with the enemy?
100%. They weren't whole, right? So just being strong and courageous and everything like that, I need to be whole with God, right? I need to be right with my spiritualness, with my family, with everything else. I don't need to be strong. Just being strong and being able to work out and being able to do all these things and being competitive. Yeah, sure, that's definitely attributes of a man. But being whole, when not to do it, right? When not to be violent for whatever reason, right? When to actually be soft in things, right? So being whole, and he wasn't, because that was his whole persona, was I am strong, right? And it probably started out, you could probably see it started out with God him being strong because of God, but everything we read, he was strong because he was strong, and it's me. And he wasn't whole. That was his whole thought process and persona, is strength.
It's good.
Yeah, it is good. The thing that I think stands out to me the most in this, and I think it's the most applicable, is this idea of the Spirit of the Lord came upon him. And it's throughout this whole time, whenever he's not even, we're not talking about a sinless man. It never one time is like, and he's the greatest among them, or he is blameless on the side of God. He's righteous. We never see that.
No.
But he stays inside of the bounds, for the most part, that God has given him. And while he's inside of those bounds, namely, don't cut your hair. Like there's a rule, God's laid it on him, and it's like, don't do this thing. Anytime it's needed, the Spirit of the Lord comes upon him. He attacks and he wins. Whether we see the reason valid or not for why he does it, the Spirit of the Lord comes upon him anyway. But as soon as he is outside of that standard that God has set, it says the Spirit of the Lord has left him. And for us, it's like, hey, we get so locked up on the legal aspects of our faith. It's like, is this a sin? Like that question comes up so frequently. It's like, can I do this? Is that a sin? How are we allowed? What about this? If I do it this way instead of going over here, if I do it on Tuesday upside down at the YMCA, is that a sin? But the reality is if we're inside the standard that God set, we don't have to ask if it's a sin or not. If we're inside of the will of God, we don't have to ask if it's a sin. But the Spirit of the Lord is upon us, and he's working, he's moving in our life. But when we step outside of that, when we get away from what glorifies God, when we get into outside of his will, we start to find ourselves where the Spirit of the Lord's left us. And the Spirit of the Lord has left him, and we find ourselves in these tough spots on our own, trying to overcome sexual sin, trying to overcome anger and becoming whole and fulfilling with valor. But you're doing it on your own, and can't.
Nope.
Just straight up can't. You need God to do that.
Okay.
To move through that.
Whole kid, if you're asking me, you already know the answer.
Yeah, it's very much.
I love that. That was really good. I like that.
That is so true. Yeah.
Cool.
Well, cool. This has been Act Like Men.
Act Like Men. It's over. It's done.
Act Like Men.
I'm going to tell y'all right now. Hallelujah. This was a way better idea in my head, I think.
I enjoyed it. I liked it.
No, I did. What it did do, if you followed along, if you haven't watched any of the episodes, go back and check them out. But do it through this lens. We're talking about like men. And so it's not, today, Samson's story is short, and it's really kind of intertwined with what made him man, what made him significant. It's kind of all inside of the story. But we talk about Moses, and Moses, in the message I mentioned, he lives an unimaginable life, like totally crazy. But there's points where we can relate to him. And then there's points where he's human and he makes mistakes. Noah was how we kicked this thing off. And it's like, maybe the most famous Bible story.
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
I would say most people
It's
know
close.
about the flood, know about the 2x2, and they want to say how crazy that is. I mean, one of the most important men in the history of our faith, and also make some pretty big mistakes. We talk about it. We get into the weeds with Daniel. We get into the weeds with David. Joseph.
Yep.
Like, this has been a cool series for talking about how men can interact with their own Bible.
Yes, amen.
And to grow with these men. Not just think of them as special. Not think of them as above you or different than you. Moses might be. His calling from God was pretty significant.
Pretty well.
But it's incredible. We've got Job. That's a message. This will probably come out after the series or after the message comes out. Go back and watch Job. Job's a powerful story. Job is the man who suffers, but Job also is a father. Job is a husband. Job is an entrepreneur, businessman. Job is a friend, leader. There's so many things in the story of Job outside of devil tempts him and he survives. There's a lot to what goes on here. We're going to talk Elijah the last week of the live semester. It will come out after this one, I assume. And Elijah is my favorite story of the Bible, the best for last, if you will. And we're going to bring the fire down with that one. So it's going to be an awesome end to the semester. But make sure you subscribe. I haven't said that in a while. Make sure you like and subscribe here. Hit the bell notification. We have so much stuff coming out. If you're one of our Pointmen, or if you're remote and you want to be a part of the team, we are looking for dudes who can edit video. And so if you have that skill, that talent, God's gifted you with that, we need you. Insert picture of we need you, want you here. I'm just kidding. But we really do. We want to make more content for men. We want to help more men connect with their Bible, help men grow in Scripture. But we need help to do that. We're only so big as a team, and our team needs to grow to be able to do that. So if you have that talent, that skill, that ability, and you've been watching us and you're like, I could help them. That's actually how this all got started in the first place. So we need you. So again, head over to Facebook, That.church, Point_man on Facebook, or head over to Instagram at TC Pointman on Instagram. Shoot us a message. Let us know you're interested in hooking it up and helping edit some videos in the future, because we would love to have you on the team. So, but yeah, until next time, this is Act Like Men. This will be the last time you see us talking about men in the Bible. Next up is an awesome interview that I cannot wait for. I'm sure we'll tease it later, but you'll have to come back and subscribe to find out. We'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.